In every crime, a story of a survivor, of someone left behind, of someone determined to solve a mystery. These are the stories of crimes that changed lives forever. This is Justice Rules.
A connected Georgia attorney riding in a car with his successful businesswoman wife. She was up front, he was sitting in the back when she was shot. He said it was an accident, that the gun he was holding in his lap for protection just went off. It seemed like police believed him. They charged him with involuntary manslaughter, but prosecutors didn't buy it. Jovita Moore walks us through the compromise that put him behind bars for the rest of his life.
The summer of 2016 saw protests across the country and the rise of the Black Lives Matters movement. As many as 10,000 people rallied on the streets of Atlanta that summer as the movement picked up steam. Peaceful protests, but enough to worry Atlanta lawyer Claud Tex McIver and his wife Diane. The couple had just pulled off the highway in downtown Atlanta on a summer night. A family spokesperson told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that Tex had been dozing in the back seat of their SUV and noticed people standing on the corner of an intersection. Concerned about the recent unrest, the spokesperson says Tex asked his wife to take the gun out of the glove compartment and pass it to the back seat. Tex dozed off again, and suddenly the gun went off. Diane had been shot in the back. Diane's best friend, Danny Jo Carter, who was driving the SUV, raced the couple to a hospital. That's where Diane died.
She still believes that this was an accident. She cannot get her mind wrapped around the idea of anything other than that. Tex and Diane were both her friends for a very long time.
Police and prosecutors spent months gathering evidence in the case, examining the SUV and the McIvers' financial records to determine if there was any motive behind the shooting. Tex faced no immediate charges, but then rumors swirled when Tex decided to hold an estate sale and sell off his wife's clothing, jewelry, and furs. That sale drew thousands of people.
I've never seen a collection of clothing this large in a private home. Prada, Valentino, Chanel, Jimmy Choo. It's pretty magnificent. I think she traveled all over the world and bought things in different countries and, probably picked things up along the way.
Then just 4 days before Christmas, Atlanta police announced they are charging McIver with manslaughter and reckless conduct, charges that seem as if police believe the shooting was an accident. However, McIver is ordered to wear an ankle bracelet, hand over his passport, and all of his guns.
Where Mr. McIver is in life right now, it is a tough place to be in.
McIver continued to fight the rumors that there was a financial motive, but court documents emerged showing that McIver had borrowed $350,000 from his wife and was supposed to pay back the loan with interest. McIver told the Atlanta newspaper he used the money to build a barn on their ranch, but admitted the couple kept their finances mostly separate. That triggered the district attorney to dig deeper into the couple's finances. It was then, in April 2017, that investigators from the district attorney's office found another gun while serving a warrant, a violation of Texas bond.
Why would he have a gun? And I'm gonna tell you, Judge, what you can infer from some of the evidence. It's because he is infatuated with guns.
The gun, a Glock 9mm, was found in Tex McIver's sock drawer. McIver's attorneys suggested that others may have planted that gun to frame him, send him back to jail, and force him to plead guilty.
I am going to revoke Mr. McIver's bond, but I am amenable to reinstating it. And so what that means is that Mr. McIver is going to go into custody today.
Just a day later, after the judge sent McIver back to jail, a grand jury indicted him, this time on murder charges. It alleges that McIver meant to shoot and kill his wife in that SUV.
He's a 74-year-old man. He is emotionally drained. I don't think he slept a full night since his wife's death. And I'm very concerned about him being in jail right now, and we're trying to get him out as quickly as we can.
McIver would remain in jail for another 8 months. But right before his release, he granted an interview in his cell and talked about why he had a gun on his lap.
I'm an Eagle Scout, and as I learned in the Scouts, it's your obligation to protect people around you. And that's what I was doing that night. That's what I've done other times. And sometimes that's a weapon, sometimes it's martial arts, it's whatever we need. But guns are not my thing. I just miss my wife so much. It was the perfect marriage. Every day I reach for her in the morning when I wake up. Anyway, I've got to rely upon my faith at this point.
McIver found himself back in court, this time for his trial. Prosecutors opened by painting a picture of a killer.
This is a case about maintaining an image of wealth and power. The easiest way for him to gain control was to kill Diane. Diane McIver opened the console and picked up a gun that was in a plastic Publix bag, handed it to the defendant, not knowing that that would be the weapon that ended her life. Somehow the defendant wants you to believe that the death of Diane McIver was an accident. But ladies and gentlemen, this was no accident at all. And the evidence will show that this was indeed murder.
Prosecutors accused McIver of asking a friend to pay off the district attorney to make the charges go away. His attorneys shrugged it off.
This was not a serious comment. The fact it was a stupid comment. Tex did not mean for Jeff Dickerson to run off and try to bribe Paul Howard.
McIver's attorney called a friend of the family as a witness.
You observed that they had a loving relationship?
Yes.
All right. And you were asked to describe, I think on direct, you were asked to describe their relationship. And it was, to you, it appeared to be a very good relationship?
Yes.
Never saw them argue?
No.
They also argued that Tex killed Diane because she changed her will to keep him from getting the couple's ranch. Instead, it would go to their godson.
She had no children. So it was like, I guess you could say, a grandson to her. You know, she cherished the ground that boy walked on, literally.
And then the star witness, the driver, Danny Joe Carter.
I heard a big boom, and I didn't know what it was. I thought there was an explosion somewhere. Diane turned around, like, she turned around this way. She slung around and she says, "Tex, what did you do?" She said, "Tex, she shot me."
Carter says McIver leaned forward to console Diane, but she says he never attempted to figure out where her injury might be. Instead, he directed Carter to drive to Emory Hospital instead of calling 911. And once there, Danny Joe says that Tex asked for his phone.
And he said, "I know this doesn't look good." And I knew he was calling his attorney because that's what attorneys do.
She says he directed her to make statements to police.
You just need to say you came down here as a friend of the family. I don't trust these guys. Danny Joe, I hate to see you get wrapped up in this. I've seen how these things can go down. I didn't understand why I needed to make up a story when there wasn't anything. There was no reason to make up another story besides that I'd driven them to the emergency room.
And on cross-examination,
Tex was the kind of man and the kind of husband. He'd get up early, he'd cook breakfast, he'd bring breakfast and coffee to Diane. Correct? And Tex McIver referred to Diane McIver all the time as darling, right?
Yes.
All the time?
All the time.
Then jurors got to hear how Tex explained the shooting to police.
I said, I look, if you don't mind, please hand me my truck. I was in the center console. We've had some break-ins in our office where the only thing they're looking for seems to be a gun. And so in response to that, I grabbed my gun in the public grocery sack. So she came to a stop. And I was handling the gun. I realized it was in my lap. I immediately called out. I said, "Everybody all right?"
Weeks of testimony ended as Tex McIver waived his chance to testify, and attorneys for both sides made their final case.
He is guilty. He is guilty.
The gun was aimed. The gun was in perfect working condition.
When he killed Diane McIver, you know, it's like hitting the lottery. Like hitting the lottery. Because if she stopped supporting him in the manner in which he was accustomed, he had a problem.
Who would ever plan to commit a murder and ask the victim to please hand me the gun?
We do not convict people on the clouds and fogs of speculation, but on the bedrock of fact.
We're not talking about reasonable doubts here. We're talking about just astonishing improbabilities.
After 6 days of deliberations, the jury came back without a decision.
We don't see a path to overcome our differences on the defendant's intent related to charges 1, 2, 3, 5. I'm going to share with the jurors that they need to continue their deliberations after they have a lunch break. I am going to inform them that they should remain thoughtful, consider each count individually, that they should consider lesser included offenses.
Then, just a few hours later,
on count 1, murder, we find the defendant not guilty. On count 2, felony murder, we find the defendant guilty of felony murder. On count 3, aggravated assault, we find the defendant guilty. On count 4, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, we find the defendant guilty. On count 5, influencing a witness, we find the defendant guilty.
the jury found Tex McIver guilty of felony murder, a crime of intent, with a mandatory sentence of life in prison.
Difficult.
1 month later, at his sentencing, McIver spoke one last time about his wife.
The luckiest day of my life is when Diane chose me. And in doing so, we started a relationship that was, can only be described as amazing. We loved each other like small children.
The judge, Robert McBurney, pointed out what McIver did not say.
I didn't ever hear you say you're sorry for what you did. To me, that silence speaks volumes.
The judge granted Tex McIver the possibility of parole after he completes 30 years behind bars. He'd be over 100 years old by then.
A shooting, a sunken fishing boat, and millions of inheritance money. A dramatic equation investigators believe adds up to murder.
Why would someone refuse to answer questions about the disappearance of their mother and the death of their grandfather?
The challenge police face in finding enough evidence to prove it.
A tale of murder, mystery, and money is the focus of litigation in 2 states right now. What happened to Linda Carmen, presumed lost at sea, and her father murdered in his bed in Connecticut? At the center of it all, one person who stands to inherit millions. Reporter Bob Ward takes a deeper look at the accusations swirling around Nathan Carmen.
Hello, this is Nathan Carmen.
Nathan, this is United States Coast Guard Boston. I need to understand what happened.
More than a year after that dramatic rescue at sea, many are still trying to understand what really happened to Linda Carmen and to her wealthy father, real estate mogul John Chocolus. Nathan Carmen is the last person known to be with either of them, and the suspicions build from there.
Why would someone refuse to answer questions about the disappearance of their mother and the death of their grandfather? It's terribly disturbing.
Boston attorney Dan Small represents Linda Carmen's sisters. They're seeking a court order in New Hampshire to block Nathan from ever gaining an inheritance worth millions.
We're alleging that Nathan Carmen murdered his grandfather, John Chocolus.
Just before Christmas 2013, John Chocolates was shot to death in his bed in his Connecticut home. Hours earlier, Nathan and his grandfather had dinner at the house. Authorities allege before the murder, Nathan bought a powerful rifle that matches the caliber of the gun used to kill John Chocolates, but Nathan did not tell police about it when they first asked, and Nathan won't explain where that gun is right now.
How do you lose a gun like that? How do you forget about it when the police ask you? But how do you lose it? Do you leave it at the Dunkin' Donuts or something? The story is nonsense, and it's deeply disturbing.
Nathan Carman was nearly charged for his grandfather's murder, but a judge refused to sign an arrest warrant without more information. A year later, the daughter of John Chocolates was upset because his killer was still out there.
This person killed at least once that we know of. This person's gotten away with murder, and chances are it will happen again.
2 years after that statement, Linda Carman, Nathan's mother, was lost at sea during a fishing trip with Nathan in his boat near Block Island. Nathan cannot explain why the boat sank or what happened to Linda. He never sent a distress call, yet he had time to load a life raft with provisions. After a week at sea, he was rescued and said little other than to ask the Coast Guard where his mom was. An insurance company is now claiming the sinking was no accident, that Nathan himself made modifications to the boat that caused it to sink.
He was so affected by the loss of his mother that apparently one of his first calls was to his criminal defense attorney. That's how he was affected.
Even before Nathan got back on dry land, police searched his Vermont home looking for evidence. Nathan Carman didn't have much to say to reporters there either.
I feel healthy. Emotionally, I've been through a huge amount.
Nathan Carman still lives in this house in Vernon, Vermont. We wanted to talk to him. We think it's important to get his side of the story. But all of his phones are disconnected. And once we got here, it was apparent. Doesn't seem like Nathan Carman is interested in talking to us. The handwritten note warns no media personnel beyond this point. My email request was not answered.
I would just like to thank the public for their prayers and for their concern.
Nathan Carman was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a developmental disorder that affects social interaction. We asked Dr. Ellen Broughton, clinical psychologist at Mass General Hospital, how that might impact Nathan's role in these cases.
Being obsessed with guns doesn't necessarily mean he's obsessed with using the guns. And that doesn't mean they can't commit violent crimes, but it's not associated with violent crimes at all. And in fact, a lot of kids with Asperger's and young adults with Asperger's are actually very tender-hearted.
Nathan Carman is not charged with any crimes, yet he remains the focus of two fierce battles in two different courts. Is Nathan Carman a dangerous person?
We believe Nathan Carman is a murderer, and if he gets away with murder, I don't know how else you would define a dangerous person than that.
And right now, Nathan Carman remains the only person who can shed significant light on a very dark mystery.
In new court documents filed in October 2018, Nathan Carman alleged his 87-year-old grandfather had a 25-year-old mistress who knew he was wealthy, suggesting that could put him at risk for robbery by her or others. No one has ever been charged in connection to the death of John Chocolates. A Pittsburgh woman missing. Her dog found wandering alone. Her burned out car spotted a short time later. But where is Cassandra Gross? Her family has spent months searching for her with little to go on. Reporter Michelle Newell explains their heartbreaking decision to have her legally declared dead, even though her body has not been found.
Every day, Kathy Gross has a routine.
Who can I talk to? Where can I go? Where can I search? Who can I get to help me search? It's constant, all day, every day.
It's been that way since April, the month her daughter, Cassandra Gross, disappeared. Cassandra's blind and diabetic dog was found in the Beatty Crossroads area, and the same day Gross's parents reported her missing. After that, Cassandra's burnt-out car was spotted in a wooded area along train tracks near Twin Lakes Park. Police searched 2 homes connected to Gross's ex-boyfriend. Thomas Stanko is in the Westmoreland County Prison on unrelated charges. And this past weekend,
Sunday,
like many other days, Cassandra's mother and others held on to hope with each step they took.
She's not where we searched.
There is another day the Gross family has to add to their sorrow.
January 22nd at 9 o'clock, courtroom 9, is the hearing day.
That court day is for something Gross's son and attorney are requesting.
She needs to be declared dead because it will not only help my grandson with some closure, but I'm hoping it will help the police build their case better.
A case that doesn't seem to be moving nearly as fast as the days that have gone by. Kathy has put her life and health on hold just to find her daughter, even skipping her own cancer treatments.
Until I find her. And then if it's too late, that's okay too. But it's all about her. I've got to bring her home.
In January 2019, a judge formally declared Cassandra Gross dead 9 months after she disappeared. The judge said that the facts indicate she was the victim of a homicide.
Thank you for joining us tonight. And remember, for so many of these families, one tip could be the key to bringing them closure and putting those responsible behind bars for good.
In every crime, a story of a survivor, of someone left behind, of someone determined to solve a mystery. These are the stories of crimes that changed lives forever. This is Justice Rules.
Murder, and decades later, revenge. It's a sad, complicated story that goes back 39 years and still leaves behind the mystery of who kidnapped and murdered a 20-year-old woman. Reporter Jana Clark spent months digging into this investigation and found out why a Creek County, Oklahoma man held such a grudge.
Someone rumbled up on a motorcycle to this house, walked up in the yard, and shot a man in the face.
And initially, nobody knows why.
To figure out why, police had to dig.
We had to go way back.
All the way back to 1979, to a young love, a murder, and a grudge that festered for more than 3 decades.
A long time to hold a grudge.
A steamy September still felt like summer.
It's a warm day, hot day.
For 5 days, no one knew she lay here in the leaves. Someone murdered 20-year-old Deborah Ashton and left her in the woods about 30 minutes south of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Do you feel like it was somewhere in this area?
I feel we're within a few hundred feet of it.
Retired Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation agent Roger Crisco knows this case better than anyone. This photo was taken of Agent Crisco at the murder scene.
I have thought about this case many times.
I went to the Creek County Courthouse.
1979, criminal felony docket.
And pulled out the old case. The testimony says Deborah was found only wearing a blue shirt. Her name, Debbie, printed on the front.
She was partially clothed when we found her. She had been sexually assaulted.
Debbie was going through a divorce and living with her boyfriend, James Redding. James testified he'd seen Debbie that morning, that she was going to work at the gas station.
It was the gas station where the crime started.
Yes, it was.
The gas station's long gone now. It sat on historic Route 66, a few miles north of small town Sapulpa, Oklahoma.
Is this about where the gas station was?
This is a general location.
At first, no one could find Debbie. For days, the newspaper ran stories about the missing woman who disappeared from her job. Her family offered a reward for her safe return. 5 days after she went missing, a man who was searching the woods for scrap metal came across Debbie's body. Investigators believed 2 men robbed the store on September 13th, kidnapped Debbie, drove a few miles to these woods, raped her, and shot her several times in the head. Investigators later arrested Joe Cathcart and Timmy Reel, and the DA charged them with murder.
Did you feel like you had the 2 guys that had done it?
Obviously, we felt that way.
In 1980, a jury heard the case.
It's a stone cold murder.
Lance McLean was Joe's defense attorney.
Is it one of your most memorable cases?
Yeah, absolutely. It was an intense thing, and you remembered it. I remember.
The jury found both men not guilty. So do you think Cathcart shot her?
I don't really think that. They didn't have any good proof at all on him, so I had no reason to believe he was guilty of it.
Were you disappointed about the outcome?
Well, of course I was.
According to the judicial system, the case was closed. Case closed right there. That was just kind of the end of it, right?
Yes, it was.
Not for the family, I'm sure.
It's never over for the family. Justice wasn't served.
35 years went by. And on the 4th of July, 2015,
This day was going to be the day.
a man on a motorcycle rode up to this Tulsa home asking for Joe Cathcart.
And then he parked his motorcycle a ways away and walked up on foot and asked where Joe Cathcart was.
Comes up to Joe and says, you know, are you Joe? And why do you want to know? And he indicates somehow that he's Joe. He pulls out a gun and shoots him in the face.
Wow.
There's a reason for it.
Calculated.
Correct.
Now retired Tulsa Police Sergeant Dave Walker says the shooter was James Redding, Debbie's boyfriend from all those years ago. So you believe that shooting Cathcart was an attempt at revenge for murder?
I think it was to avenge the death of his girlfriend and then doing something that the system didn't do.
Timmy, the other defendant, died of cancer in 2012.
So who else is he going to go after? Apparently he loved her a lot. It's hard to imagine someone carried a 35-year grudge.
A few days after James shot Joe,
He told his brother that he did something bad and he won't be seeing him for a real long time.
Walker says James then shot and killed himself with the same gun. Turns out, the same kind of gun used to kill Debbie almost 4 decades ago. As for Joe, he survived the gunshot, but was paralyzed. I talked to him on the phone while he was in the hospital. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right as far as I'm alive. It's been hard. It's been real hard.
Joe told me about the day James shot him.
He shot me in the mouth and went through the center of my spine.
Did he shoot you to get revenge?
It sounds like it. If he did feel that I did, I don't hold no blame towards that guy. He loved her that much.
Investigators say James believed Joe had gotten away with murder. I have to ask you, did you kill Deborah Ashton?
No, man, I didn't kill that girl. There's nothing I can say. God only knows whoever it was didn't get caught. I'm sorry that nobody ever got caught. Because I wish they had. I'm sorry that girl got killed. I'm sorry that man felt that bad about it.
It was sealed up. It was sealed up, and this is where I found it.
A couple years later, a Creek County detective, Dan Brashear, found this old bag of evidence from Debbie's murder case. What did you think when you saw it?
I was excited that we would find something.
Brashear sent a couple items that could be tested for DNA to the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation.
Anything that might have been detected today that couldn't have been in 1979.
Meanwhile, a year and a half after he was shot, Joe got out of the hospital and talked to me inside a Tulsa nursing home.
My family has to pay for it. I'm crippled, I'm paralyzed from the neck down. I can't support my family no more. I can't even hug them.
I told Joe about the evidence that would be tested for DNA.
I'm eager to help them any way I can.
Joe's convinced a convict, Bobby Joe Carr, is Debbie's murderer. Bobby Joe was the star witness in the case against Joe and Timmy.
And they went solely on Bobby Joe Carr's word.
Bobby, a convicted robber and burglar, testified that Timmy and Joe confessed to him about raping and killing Debbie. In court, Bobby admitted he'd made a plea agreement and was getting a lighter sentence on several of his cases in exchange for testifying against Joe and Timmy. Why did detectives believe his story?
Because he knew too much about particular. What I honestly believe what Bobby Joe did, he did the crime, and he was just telling them a true story, but he was just putting me and Timmy's name in place of his.
Bobby was even the one who led detectives to the murder weapon in the woods.
On the stand, they said, "You ever been down those roads before?" And he said, "Never." He said, "Well, if you've never been in that part of town in your life, how was it you took the OSBI over in that part of town and went down all these dirt roads and took the police within 15 yards of where the gun was?" And Bobby couldn't explain that.
Not long after this interview, in November 2017, Joe passed away, complications from the gunshot wound. The man he accused, Bobby, died in 1985, just 5 years after he testified against Joe and Timmy. As for the evidence Detective Brashear sent to the OSBI, he received a report. The test results? Inconclusive.
It was upsetting.
Before he passed away, I asked Joe about Debbie. Her murder is still unsolved.
Is there anything that you would want to say to Ashton's family?
I'm sad for them. They need answers. And I'm sad that they ain't found nothing. And I want them to keep going through their evidence.
The Creek County District Attorney isn't giving up. He's asking detectives to search the department for more evidence that could be tested with today's technology. Court records show investigators had found these items near Debbie's body: blue jeans, underwear, house shoes, and a Levi jean jacket.
There's still a chance someone could come forward with information.
There's always a chance, and someone out there knows something. I'm confident about that.
A love story, a murder, and a revenge murder.
So long, and that love must have been so strong.
He stole my life. He felt he was right. He apparently loved that girl very much. And I don't blame him. I really don't. He done what he thought was right. It's just that he shot the wrong guy.
And today, still no answers about who kidnapped and killed Debbie, then left her in the woods. A cold case that's just getting colder.
This is still just a mystery.
It is.
It's quite a story.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is.
Not a good story.
Nope. There's nothing good about this story. Justice wasn't done. You know, justice wasn't done.
Anyone with information about who murdered Debbie Ashton is asked to call the Creek County Sheriff's Office in Oklahoma. That number, 918-224-4964.
Murder, cannibalism, even vampires. All things friends say this man followed closely, and he's the last known person to see a missing woman alive.
I don't want to think about what her last moments may have been like.
The crime he's already serving time for, and why police are having so much trouble getting justice. Sexually assaulted, murdered, and dumped on the side of the road.
You know, it's a wound that is never going to heal.
A family seeking justice for 40 years. The new technology that could finally bring them closure.
For the first time ever, investigators posted this billboard asking for answers in the brutal murder of a Massachusetts teenager. The billboard marks 40 years since the death of Teresa Corley. She stormed out of a bar in December 1978, only to be found days later sexually assaulted, murdered, and dumped on the side of a highway. Her family has been seeking justice ever since. Reporter Bob Ward spoke to Teresa's younger sister, still on a mission to find Teresa's killer.
In 1978, this was Teresa Corley's home in Bellingham. On the night of December 5th into the early morning of December 6th, 1978, all Teresa wanted to do was get home. She never made it.
It still feels like yesterday.
Jerry Hood is Teresa Corley's younger sister, still on a mission to find Teresa's killer.
You know, it's a wound that is never going to heal, and we're constantly going back to that day in our minds. You know, myself, my family.
On December 8th, 1978, Teresa Corley's naked body was found on the side of Route 495 North near the Bellingham-Milford line. She appeared to be strangled, and her clothes were left with her body. A simple white cross marks that spot today. But in neighboring Franklin, Massachusetts, where this nightmare began, there's nothing left of what was once the train stop bar. It was here on December 5th at about midnight that Teresa Corley abruptly left a birthday party for her boyfriend and stormed out after a heated argument. She was wearing nothing more than jeans and a light jacket on a cold night. This is where Teresa began trying to get home.
What shocked me the most was they see my sister, who some have said, quote unquote, oh, we loved her dearly, you know, she was a great girl. They all watched her leave angry. They all watched her leave angry.
3 men from the party caught up to Teresa and brought her to a Franklin apartment on Route 140. Here, Teresa was sexually assaulted, possibly by all 3 men. At about 4:30 in the morning, intoxicated, Teresa got away, wearing one shoe belonging to a man. At a recent meeting with investigators, Jerry was shown those shoes.
I'm thinking she was in a scramble to get out of that apartment, and she grabbed whatever she could, thinking they were her shoes. She put on her shoe, she put on the mismatched shoe, but she just in a hurry wanted to get out of there.
Further up on 140, a Gorelick Farms truck driver saw Teresa and gave her a ride, dropping her off in Bellingham Center. Teresa was last seen alive near a Dairy Queen, less than a mile from home.
But I'm confident she could have made it home if she was left be.
"40 years later, Jerry Hood is still searching for justice. She successfully pushed for her sister's exhumation. Authorities told her an unknown male's DNA was found on jeans found near Teresa's body. She has been told there is still more evidence that can be tested.
I can never really give up on this, and I have to keep pushing somehow, some way, to keep going with this.
Soon, Jerry Hood will set up a new cross out on Route 495, but there is still one more thing she might do for Teresa. Jerry's thinking about finishing Teresa's journey home 40 years later.
Teresa needed to get home that night, and for myself, my own kind of resolution in a way is to go from the spot that she was last seen and make it home kind of for her. But that's for me. That's something for me.
The Norfolk County DA's office is displaying this new billboard for Teresa Corley, asking for tips. The billboard is located on Route 140 in Franklin, across the street from the supermarket where Teresa once worked. Teresa's family is offering a $25,000 reward. If you have any information about the murder of Teresa Corley, please contact the Massachusetts State Police at 781-830-4990. Tracy Ocasio was just enjoying a night out in Orlando, watching her favorite basketball team. At the end of the night, she was seen leaving with a man, but no one ever saw her again. It has been 10 years. Police have a suspect, a man in jail right now for trying to kill another woman. His friends say he harbors disturbing fascinations from serial killers to cannibalism and even vampires. But as reporter Shannon Butler explains, they still can't find her or any evidence linking him to her disappearance.
Elizabeth Ocasio said she last spoke with her daughter about 8:30 p.m. on May 26, 2009. Tracy Ocasio was going to watch her favorite basketball team in the playoffs at a Florida bar. When the 27-year-old didn't come back to her parents' Ocoee home, her mother thought she stayed with friends. But early the next morning, Elizabeth Ocasio sent her daughter a text message, "Where are you?" No response, and call after call went to voicemail.
My mother's intuition is terrified, because this isn't like her. So something happened to her. But what happened is what I need to find out.
The panic set in when police called on the afternoon of May 27th to say they found Tracy Ocasio's car a few miles from home. It was parked on private property and the owners were going to have it towed. Nobody seemed to know how it ended up there. Her daughter's purse was in the car, but her cell phone and keys were gone.
So I don't want to think about what her last moments may have been like.
That night, Tracy Ocasio officially became a missing person and a search was underway. Police had their eye on the man she left the bar with. Police released surveillance video showing James Hadaway leaving the taproom bar with Ocasio around 1:30 a.m. They questioned Hadaway for about 11 hours over 2 days, but detectives said he claims she gave him a ride home, but he didn't know where she went after that. But Ocasio's car was found abandoned just 200 yards from his house, and bloodhounds didn't hit on Ocasio's scent, leading police to believe she didn't park her own car there. There was also no evidence that she had been injured or killed inside that car. Ocoee police then went to Hadaway's home with a search warrant. They seized a computer from the home Hadaway shared with his dad after detectives were told by his friends that he expressed interest in murder, suicide, cannibalism, vampires, and serial murders. In the meantime, Ocoee police took a call from a girl in another county who said she saw Hadaway on the news and told them she was attacked by him the year before. Rachel Clark told investigators that in August of 2008, she was dropping Hadaway off at his house after a party when he tried to break her neck. Hadaway was arrested for attempted murder. And then another call from police in Apopka, Florida, linking him to another missing person. 29-year-old Anda Christopher George was last seen in February of 2009 with Hadaway and another man. The following day, officers found those two men coming out of the woods near the lake. The men said George was on drugs and ran into the woods. They said they searched for him but couldn't find him. Both men have refused now to talk more with police. 2 years later, police found George's bones in the muck of the lake. The medical examiner couldn't tell how he died, and that case was closed. But Hadaway went to trial that same year for the attack on Rachel Clark. He was convicted after the woman told the jury she thought she was going to die.
He lifted me up by my neck and was also saying, "Don't make me kill you," and I was saying, "I'll do whatever you want."
In 2019, it will be a decade since the Ocasios have seen their daughter. They haven't given up, and neither have the police.
Search efforts still continue for Ocasio, but few tips have come in the last few years. Hadaway has never said what he may or may not know about Ocasio's disappearance. He is serving a life sentence for that other case. Thank you for joining us tonight. And remember, for so many of these families, one single tip could be the key to bringing them closure and putting those responsible behind bars for good.